Good afternoon, everybody. We are live. This is the recording of the Elevating IT podcast. It's Friday. You are listening to this week's episode of the Elevating IT podcast, and it is recorded live every Friday on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can tune in at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am Mike Brooks, and I'm here with Frank DiBenedetto from Audit.
Good afternoon, Mike. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Good to see everybody on. Let us know, comment. Let us know where you are. Say hi. Make a joke. That's the cool thing about doing it live. You can actually see what's going on with people. So feel free to post a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Today's episode, we're talking about, we're continuing our conversation on the elements of really what it takes to get to a sale, how to sell. And we started in, I'll tell you what, Frank, I'm doing a lot of talking. Why don't you recap where we've been, and we'll talk about where we're going. We're on week 3 of this.
Yeah, so I believe we spoke about the gap, right? That people are buying change essentially, and the change and the value is in the difference between the present state and the future state. What did we talk about the first week? The first week was something very basic. I forget now, actually.
Yeah, nice. I stumped you. I love it.
Yeah, you did. You put me on the spot there. I'm like,
I never stump you.
We're trying to remember.
You are unstumpable. Like, this is I'm glad we're recording this moment. This is great. Yeah. So the first week was, you didn't do your homework, Frank. The first week was, I know it's been a long week. Well, we didn't even talk about that. Maybe we should rewind, because we were supposed to chat yesterday, and you had like all sorts of family stuff, and you were out on vacation, so you get a pass for the week. But we started talking about the problem. Nothing really happens if there's not a problem.
Right. That's right. No problem, no sale.
No problem, no sale. That was week 1, and then last week was you had it right. You were just working backwards from week 2 to week 1.
That's right.
It's been one of those weeks, right?
Yeah, so I was down the Jersey Shore. It's some nice weather. Just got in beach mode. Came back on Wednesday Tuesday to get on a call that I promised somebody. I rearranged my schedule to accommodate, and so I came back on 2 wheels. I just made that call. It's just playing some catch up. We're busy, which is good. Sometimes going away, you come back and you have more work, but you do need to charge the batteries. So, as they say, it's all good. And the weekend's almost here, right? So, 2 o'clock on Friday, East Coast time. Yeah,
we're getting back. Like, that's the thing about doing that. And this is, the rules of this podcast are that there are no rules. We can have fun. We can talk about nonsense. We can talk about serious stuff, but it's Friday, man. It's the weekend, so we're nice and loose, ready to rock and roll.
There you go.
So
what's this week's topic? This week's topic is change, right?
Yeah, we're talking. So let's recap again, right? So let's back up. We talked about the problem, and that's nothing happens if there's no problem, right? People are motivated, and that's our job when we're fact finding. We talked a lot about that. When you're going out there, and the sale is really made when you open the door for the very first meeting, right? The technical assessment, or maybe even before that on the phone. It's when you start talking to people, and really what you're trying to do is uncover the problem and the pain that's associated with the problem. And then week 2 is we talk about the gap, the value, and the gap of the value. And the bigger the gap, the more value there is. And today it's about change, right? Finding the problem is not enough. People buy a solution to a problem, but the problem has to be bad enough for them to want to change.
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about. Next week, we're going to talk about, and we can overlap this. I mean, there's no rules here, right? Because number 3 and number 4 kind of interplay with each other. Number 3 is change, but it overlaps with number 4, really, which people don't necessarily like change.
Right. I agree. I think that for a lot of prospects, they have a problem that's bothering them. They may not know all the problems, and many times they're looking for something that we perceive that we could sell a product or a service to solve, and we're missing out on the bigger picture. So to your point, during that discovery session, you need to be asking why and really drilling in and getting to the root of the problems and aggravating it so it's fresh in their mind. But people know they have problems all the time. We all deal with services or vendors or people that we kind of feel like we should do something about. There's a problem here, but we don't immediately change, right? So you might have a dentist. You don't love the dentist, but they say it's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't know, like the pain of changing. And changing an IT vendor is a big deal for businesses. It's easier if they don't have an IT company because you kind of come in fresh. But when you have an IT vendor and you've entrusted them and they have your passwords, even if they're doing a crappy job, people tend to stick with them for quite some time. And we know that our best prospects are already working with another MSP. So, for me, what that basically boils down to is that I don't have to convince this prospect to spend money every month on managed services. Like somebody else has already cleared that hurdle, right?
Right.
So that's an easier sell for me. If I'm trying to take someone from break fix to managed services, that's usually a lot more difficult because if they're used to spending, $50 a month and I'm saying spend 3,000, we're a world apart. That's a Grand Canyon of a gap. But to your point, even though there's a problem, nobody's going to buy anything unless they're ready to change. Right. And that's what they're ultimately buying from you when you realize that when they're ready to buy from somebody, what they're saying is, I want to buy change. What I have right now isn't good enough and it's not, doing the trick. And if you go in there and don't listen to them and you're just, hell bent on scanning for data or you go through whatever your robotic process is and you circumvent the discovery the way it should be done, it's unlikely that the change you're going to be selling them is what they actually want to be buying. They probably won't say yes to you.
Right. Yeah, and you hit something that's kind of important. Is it's really hard to get people to make a change because it's like you said, I think you said the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. People will literally pay and continue with bad service because the fear of switching is greater than the fear of staying. And think about it for a minute. Think about how underserved somebody can be. Like, this. You've made changes, and we've all made changes, and we've seen customers make changes where they finally make a change after years, and they go, "I'm so pissed off at myself for waiting 4 years. I was afraid. I was thinking of changing 4 years ago, and now I see I was ripped off all these years, or I see that all these problems were caused." They start to unfurl this mess that's left behind. That's a real serious thing. It's interesting. I don't, why do people do that? Why do we do that? Why do we humans do that? We all do it.
Yeah, there's comfort in longevity. That's a safety thing where it's people view the change and as risky behavior, right? So we're all programmed to be more risk adverse, to avoid that pain or that, and we all have that fear of failure. And we're programmed into thinking that longevity equals safe, right? The restaurant's been around for 50 years. This guy's been in business for 20 years. There's got to be a reason why, he's good or why he's been around that long, which doesn't necessarily equate correctly. But that's, I've read that a few different times, and it's definitely one of the reasons why people do tend to stay with that devil they know, even if they're not happy, because the fear of change is greater than their desire to change. And that's what you're really battling against. The other thing is you don't know what you don't know, which is kind of what you just said, where people say, wow, if I knew this, I would have changed 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
They don't know that. And that's why you can't afford to just take the prospect's word for it, right? When they say, oh, we need you to come in. We need new wireless access points because our Wi-Fi isn't working properly. If you just go, okay, and you send them a proposal for new wireless access points, and you never either ask them why or go there to see for yourself and then, start asking probe questions, you'll just sell a product or a service, right? And that's not great. You'll make a couple bucks, but if you want to be successful in this industry and serve your clients properly and keep them clients for a long time, then you need to find out what's the underlying cause. What are you trying to accomplish? Why do you think the wireless isn't working? What are the symptoms? What makes you think changing the wireless to a different brand or product is going to fix this, right? And you really need to drill into it. And then a lot of times you may need new wireless access points, but you know what? And you may need a new switch. You may need a firewall. You may need a UPS and some other things to go along with that. And then when you start working with that client, then they say, wow, if I knew this, I would have changed this 3 years ago. Well, don't beat yourself up. You know why? Because you're not an IT guy, right? You only know what you know. You have to pause for a second because FedEx is here and I have to sign up for something.
Oh man. So right. I'm gonna talk about something while Frank is gone because he can't correct me while he's gone. So that's fantastic. So and comment. Feel free to comment if you want to make fun of Frank for leaving during the middle of a Facebook, YouTube live. That's great. So I can't find my book because I'm in. So if you're watching this, you know I'm in a different spot. Usually I have my bookcase behind me, but I'm in a different room today. So my bookcase, I'm looking all over for a book, and there's a great book called Influence by Robert Cialdini, which I can't find, and I highly recommend you read this because this stuff is where the rubber meets the road with getting people to change their mind. Like it's really, really hard to get people to change their mind. So it makes sense to constantly try to figure out ways and techniques and strategies to get better at that. So I'm going to go back to the fact that the only way you're going to do that is by asking great questions, right? You have to probe, and you have to probe in a scientifically proven method. You can't just ask silly questions, right? You don't want to ask yes or no questions. You want to get people talking. And you don't want to ask questions that make people dig their heels in the ground. And I referenced a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini, Frank, when you were gone, that I can't find because I'm in a different room. So the book's not near me. But in that book, one of the chapters, and it's the laws of influence, and it's only like a couple laws of influence. One chapter is one law of influence, and one of them is called commitment and consistency. And the principle is that when people make a commitment, they stay consistent with that commitment. So, and you can see this. This is really at the crux of probably why we all do this. When we buy something and we become a client, I become your client. You can now beat me senseless and abuse me if you wanted to. You got to really beat me bad to make me leave, to make me want to change. So because I'm consistent with the commitment I made. You see it in politics. You see it in people arguing on social media. You ever see? I mean, we've all probably witnessed people arguing now on social media. I don't want to get into what they're arguing about, but we've all seen two people arguing back and forth in the comments, and it gets weird and it gets heated. And you can see the person who's obviously losing the battle. And the more they're losing, the more they're arguing and the more ridiculous they sound. And they're doing that because they made a commitment to their perspective, and you're not going to change their mind by belittling them, by telling them they're stupid or a sheep or whatever words you want to use, right? You have to get them to change their mind themselves. So our job as salespeople, selling at IT services, is to take them through a line of questioning that gets them to open up and gets them to change their mind. You're not changing their mind. You talk tech at them, you argue with them about stuff, and I can talk about what I argue with people about all the time from audit's perspective. I bet you can never guess what that is. But if they're not ready to make the change, I'm not going to be able to talk at them and tell them why they should make that change. I need to guide them through a line of questioning that gets them to go, oh yeah, now I think about it, and then they change their mind. They have to change their mind. commitment and consistency is a really important law of influence. You'll just never, you're not going to talk people into making a change unless they want to make a change. So there's like the Socratic method of questioning, right? Like we know that that's used by folks like Chris Voss, right?
Mm-hmm.
They guide you through that process of making you change your mind. I think that's what we need to really work on as professionals selling.
Yeah, there's definitely an art to the to the discovery session, how you ask the questions. You know, there's different types of questions, right? So there's pure discovery. Hey, how many workstations do you have? And then there's leading questions, right? Or probe questions or thought-provoking questions. I like the ones where you say, hey, so when you get together with your current IT company and you do a test restore every quarter, do they send you the results via email or do they do they put it on on paper or whatever? And then they go like this. They go, we don't do a restore. I remember I asked that to one prospect, and they were like, "Oh yeah, they email it." I could tell they were so lying, and they were like, "We don't do any of that stuff." So those are like those wedge questions, but you can kind of take them through that process to make them understand and realize there's a lot of stuff that they're not doing or that there's stones left unturned here. But yeah, I mean when you say they're talking.
Yeah, that was my Bluetooth speaker talking to me. You heard that? Usually it doesn't pick it up.
Yeah, I heard it. When you ask people like a lot of times like what people are buying from you or why they're buying from you, they start giving you all these, well, they want to do this, they want to do that, and it's all the wrong reason. Is they're buying change, and that's what you're selling. You're selling change. You got to keep that in mind. That's exactly what you're providing. And what we're doing with audit is we're helping make it really easy for people to see what that change is, right? So no one's ever going to understand all the bits and bytes. I mean, heck, it's getting harder for the MSPs to keep this stuff straight, right? But we make it really easy in the audit report for a prospect to be able to see, here's where I am presently, here's where I could be as a future state, and that's the change, right? I can see the difference very easily. If you give somebody just a proposal, what you're doing is you're assuming that they know where they are today. And the only thing that they could see as change is a change in price, which is usually up, right? Mm-hmm. And mentally, people don't want to just buy stuff that's more expensive. They want to see the value and what they're getting for that. And where the struggle is in our industry with the technology is that we speak Klingon, right? We speak in a language that our prospects don't understand. And it doesn't matter how long you talk to them for. It doesn't matter how many pages more your report is. It doesn't matter about empirical data. They don't understand it, right? So at the end of the day, if that's what you're doing is confusing them and you can't let them easily see and buy change from you, if they're still motivated for change, what they'll do is they'll buy the cheapest solution, right? And unless that's you, it's not me anymore. It may have been a long time ago, but it's not me anymore. Then it's just a race to the bottom. You're just going to get put on a spreadsheet, 4 or 5 different things. This one's the cheapest. And, and that's the way you go.
Right. And Tristan, is Bailey, just popping this up here, Tristan Bailey's listening and or watching and said, backup untested is not really working. I like the way you put that question.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just it's in how you phrase it. There's the wedge technique. It's called, who was the guy that invented that? It was actually from the insurance industry. The wedge. I forgot. I got to look that one up.
Talked about that. I can't remember it.
But it's basically how to drive a wedge between you and between your client or your prospect and the incumbent without bad mouthing the incumbent.
Yeah. And that goes back to the commitment consistency thing, right? Like, that's so important, man. You can't You can't. They've got to want to turn on their MSP. You can never make them turn on the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know I can't remember the name of the person.
Here's the ironic part too. When we've talked to prospects about any kind of assessment process, like, the approach to that, one of the top reasons why they are worried about having you do it is because they're worried that their current IT provider is going to find out that they're doing it and they're cheating on you. And
right.
So it's really weird when you think about that, right? Where they're looking for some change, they're not quite happy, but they're afraid to do anything about it because they're afraid that the company, or in this case, the IT provider that they're trying to change, is going to find out and get mad at them and, sabotage their data, hold them hostage, lock them out of accounts. I mean, that's kind of crazy to think about how much, potential power or perceived power that the client thinks that you have over them as the IT provider. And honestly, a lot of IT providers do hold that. We don't. We give people a copy. We call it a run book. Here's their documentation. You own all this stuff. We don't want people to feel like they're held hostage. We want them to stay with us because they want us to take care of their IT and they want to be here, not because they feel trapped. But I know a lot of times we acquire a new client and the old IT guy's got a stranglehold on stuff, and you've got to, pry it out of their grip. And that's why people are afraid also to change. So it's kind of interesting. We go in there with these guns ablazing discovery processes where you got to get on the server and you need admin passwords and you got to make changes to, the Windows firewalls to get things to scan and to work. All that stuff puts your prospect on high anxiety that their current IT guy is going to find out that you're messing around in there, right? And all that is going to help, it's going to impede the sale, right? It's going to slow you down. They may just say no, and I'll let you even do that. And then what are you going to do? If that was your approach, you're stuck. So
Right.
I always think, trying to address that concern up front, like on our website, we address it right away. We say, step one in the process is we perform the discovery, 69 minutes all it takes, and your current IT guy won't even know we were there. It's unintrusive. So we want people to go, oh, all right, we've already covered that. They may ask about it or not, but I at least want to try to, handle the objection before it becomes an objection. So, yeah.
It comes down to questioning, and I know that's your process. That's I know how you collect data during the discovery, during the sales process. What you do after you get the client is different, right? And that's, I think, where MSPs need to change their way of their approach to sales from it's got to be a non-technical, not, you're going to have some technical stuff, but not a forensically technical analysis during the sales process. It's got to start with questions, man. People will tell you everything that you need to hear to be able to tell them what they need to hear to buy. They'll literally tell you what they want you to tell them back if you ask the right questions. And I love the way you do it. You start with just saying, so tell me why I'm here today.
Right.
And then just shut up and listen, man. They're going to say, oh, man, my IT guy really screwed up and did this, or this happened to us, and we're not quite sure why. And then it leads to, well, tell me more. Tell me more.
Yeah, I could tell you too. The mentality of going in and we talk all about our company. Well, let me tell you about Two River Tech. We were started in 2005, and I was on the side. And I was in the financial services world. Yeah, and the reality is the prospect doesn't give a crap about you.
Right.
Sad, breaking some hearts here, but sad to say, they don't care about you, right? They care about themselves, and you got to pick up on that right away. And
their time is important to them, right? Like if you start going on a monologue about Two River Tech or your MSP,
right,
they're calculating how much longer they're going to be with you, right?
But here's the thing. There was a time, I don't know, let's call it 20 years ago, where you couldn't gain that much information about your business until you got there with your brochure. Remember your corporate brochure? We had one, paid all this money. I still have some. I got like 3 boxes of them. We must have printed, 10,000 of these things. I don't know who we thought we were going to hand them all out to, but we had the brochure. So people don't really know much about you. But now with the internet and social media, people already know all about you, right? They go on your website, they click, they read blogs, you can go on LinkedIn, wherever, right? They get a really good sense. You don't need to go in there and monologue about yourself. You introduce yourself, say hi, and basically say, hey, I'm not going to talk. You tell me everything you want me to know and tell me all your problems. And then when they tell you, then you keep digging some more. And then make some notes, write it down. And, you, of course, have to look around. You have to do some of your own discovery. You can't just take their word for it. But see, that's the thing here, man. And this is a weird thing about us MSPs. We'd rather be right and lose the sale than wrong or uncomfortable and get the client, right? Think about that. So we want to go in there and you want to sell them what you want to sell them and prove to them they need something and educate them on all the bits and bytes and show them the vendor battle cards and why they need all that stuff. And they're tuning you out. They're being polite and they don't buy from you, but you feel good because you do what makes you feel good when you're techie, right? You went through all the technical detail and you proved to them 3 different ways why this equation works and all that stuff. And meanwhile, if you actually listen to them, they would have told you all the reasons they would buy from you, right? That's what I do. I go, okay, tell me all the reasons. Okay, you think your Wi-Fi stinks? Okay, let me go digging around and I'll find out all the reasons why it stinks. But I'm going to make it all about that because that's what's bothering you, right? I'm going to find other stuff out as well. And I might say, yeah, you think your Wi-Fi is bad, but you know what the real issue is there's no firewall here. There's no security. So what's happening is your neighbors are all connecting up, and that's what's causing the issues. Oh my God, right? So it's much bigger than they think, and we just drill into that. Here's what's the impact to your business. Well, you can't work or your vendors can't connect or, the last client that we sold happened to be a church and they were like, we can't stream the services properly and it impacts donations because people can't connect up. I mean, it's like a big thing. And it's much more than just going to Best Buy and slapping up some cheap old little access point. It's a much bigger thing. But if you're hell bent on selling, managed detection and response because that's the last vendor that you signed up with, and you're super excited. You're running around. You're a solution looking for a problem. And you probably won't buy that from you or buy from anything from you. So you do have to listen. You have to, find the problem for sure. No sale, no problem, no sale. Like we talked about, you have to understand that there is value between where they are today and where they could be. And that's what the value of your solution is. But you also have to realize that really what they're doing is they're buying change, and that's what you're selling to them. You're not selling access points and managed detection and response. You're selling change.
Yeah. And you have to remember and hopefully we've nailed this during this 30 minutes that we've been live of beating this up, that getting people to make a change is really, really hard. And you have to dig really deep. And we're going to get into this more psychology on this in the coming weeks. And I'll leave off with a quick story that, this, Frank. I don't come from a technical perspective, a sales background, right? Like I sold as a salesperson. Like I was trained to sell as a salesperson. I got into internet marketing, but I was a non-technical internet marketing person. I wasn't doing the technical stuff. I had people who were doing it. I was a salesperson. I was a marketing person. So what I learned, and way back, I was doing phone sales. I actually was doing phone 2-appointment phone close. So you would come from an cold ad on the internet, because we were really good at getting leads on the internet. I would get on, you'd make an appointment with me. I would get on the phone with you and I would do a discovery call to find out what you're doing with your ads, your social media, your SEO, all that stuff. I would take a look at your website beforehand and analyze it. I would just ask you questions and listen the whole time. And then I would make an appointment for our second call, and I would just I would pull out the emotional problems and pains and all the emotion, and I would put it in a format. If you qualified as a customer for us, because not everybody did, and I would basically tell you what I was going to do for you. And it was literally what you told me you wanted. And I had a great close rate. I mean, it was a process that we took people through. It worked. People closed. And think about that. That's not a referral. That's a person generated from an ad. buying a very high ticket item over the phone with somebody they never met. It's all because of questions, getting to the problem, getting to the deep understanding of why they want to change and what they need to hear to be mentally ready to make the change and to desire to make the change.
And I think next week, a little, preview is as much as we talked about you're selling change, guess what? People don't like change even when they say that they do. So there becomes the lead in until next week's discussion.
Right on. So that's our show for today. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry for the technical difficulties with my speaker talking and Frank having to go sign for a package. But that's the way live shows are,
man. Crazy thing. Let me tell a quick story here. So I've got some product that had to be replaced, and this has got to be like one of the only vendors who requires a signature during this stuff. Everybody else,
that is actually, I didn't think about that.
Yeah,
they made you sign for it.
Well,
my pharmacy doesn't even make me sign for stuff.
But here's the thing. I didn't actually have to sign for it. I just had to be home. Like the guy had to just see me and he threw it on the porch.
Really?
So yeah, for the last 3 or 4 months, I haven't signed for anything, and I haven't gotten any stickers on my door. Like, sorry, you weren't home to sign for it. Everybody just leaves everything these days. It seems like that's been waived. I missed the guy yesterday. Is why I specifically knew what it was, because
wanted to get it.
Yeah, because I was home probably yesterday all day except for 10 minutes, and that's when FedEx showed up and I had the sticker on the door. So I knew they were going to come today, and I had a funny feeling that as soon as you and I got on live,
it's Murphy's Law.
The doorbell. Why wouldn't he? And it was funny because he was putting it, as I was going downstairs, he was putting a sticker on the door, and then he saw me. He took the sticker off. I opened the door, and he goes, "Yeah, you just have to be home," and he just tossed it on the porch, basically, like boom, like I'm not even going to touch you. He just threw it. So I didn't technically sign for it. He just visibly saw I was home.
I get it. Yeah, and that's the way it is. If this is the worst of our technical difficulties during a live, we haven't cut out once. My video hasn't frozen once. My audio went off, and I had to connect to a Bluetooth speaker, but it's all right. And my J button is falling off my.
It's all situational. I just read. Oh, this is probably slightly not appropriate, but I just read an article about they were talking about like investment bankers. Some of these guys will travel on private planes. Like it's like high stakes selling, and they're together for days, and it's a lot of like schmoozing and like dining out. And the guy was saying that they were flying from one city to the other. They've got the client in the plane. It's a smaller plane, and he said they were out like the night before big dinners. You know how you have the like sometimes when we travel, the steak and we're drinking wine and stuff. You wake up the next day and your head hurts. And the guy's, he drinks coffee, eats a big breakfast. They get on the plane and he's got to go to the bathroom. And this is like a fear of mine, like he's being trapped somewhere where you just can't use the toilet, right? And he's like, he's trying to fight it off. So the article is hilarious. I'll have to send it to you. It was on Facebook. It's really funny. But the guy was just saying how like he's trying to fight it off. They're hitting turbulence. He finally like waves to the flight attendant and says, "I hate to ask, but where's the bathroom?" And she's like, "Well, we really don't have one, but the seat like behind you like flips up, and underneath like the leather is like the toilet, but it's really like emergency only type of thing." So he says he looks, and their client, she is sitting in that seat. So he has to ask her to switch seats. He's like, "Apologize. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Switch seats, right? And he said there's a privacy shade, except it only goes up about here. So he's a bobbing head. And so he lifts up. He said the toilet looks like it was made in Italy. It's like perfectly polished, like wood. Like, no, it's never been used. And so he has to use the toilet on this plane. But so you talk about things that can go wrong in the situation. Like, to me, that's like, I would jump. I think I would just jump out of the plane.
Oh my God. That is a great way
to
end the podcast and start the weekend. Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll, on that note, empty your bladders and make sure you're not on a full stomach before you get on an airplane.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good weekend.
Have a great week, everybody.